Hey guys, it's Karalynn. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm very excited about our guest today, David Belman, who's a second generation award-winning builder. And he's going to give us some insight on how to run a successful residential construction company. Hey David, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Karalynn?
Good. So before we get into all the tips they're going to give us today, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I'm a second generation home builder. So my father started the company. We were actually originally real estate and land development in the 70s. And then 1981, during the bad recession, his builder friend that he worked with retired and left the industry. And my father kind of picked up some of his trades and said, well, I think I can build a house. I've been working with this guy for a while. So I started building homes and things picked up pretty quickly from there. And grew. He had a lot of access to properties and things. So the nice thing was when we started all of that, there weren't a lot of other people building, so he got access to some really, really great trades. And there's people that we still have working for our company that started way back then with us. So we had access to some really good contractors and are on either Gen 2, Gen 3 now of them, which is really cool. So I started more right out of high school, did all the crummy jobs from sweeping floors and all that kind of stuff to when I graduated high school when I was 17, my mom basically told me to get my real estate license and they threw me in the model. I was 17 years old trying to sell houses over the summer while I was getting my license. And I sold my first house in August before school started. And I went to college full-time selling houses and graduated, built my own house and started doing some speculative stuff and then started doing some subdivisions and then kind of did the whole thing after that. So
Awesome.
done every job in the company at some point.
As any good owner has.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me what your favorite part about being a home builder.
There's a lot, but I enjoy, the variety of the different homes that we're building. And then obviously when it's done and we're able to give them that home that they've always wanted, that's pretty special to see that. And I'm involved in a lot of different things, so I enjoy the variety of it and being able to help my project manager with something and then go to helping a client with something and just building the team and it's just all gratifying at the end of the day. And it's one of the few things where you can see it actually being made in front of you. And then working with like our great trades and stuff like that too. I enjoy all of it. It's just always new challenges though.
Yeah. As with any business, always new
Yes.
challenges. How many houses do you build a year approximately?
Typically about 25. We used to do a lot more than that, but as you know, as well as anyone, how much more complicated everything is these days.
Yeah.
From the permitting to everything. And the size of the homes and stuff that we're building it's a lot bigger. We're doing a lot more custom homes right now, just with the way the market conditions are. So we're actually doing similar dollar volume, but just bigger projects. So we're doing some lake houses and some things like that, which have been kind of fun and challenging.
Which kind of brings me into my next questions. Like, there's rumors of the residential building kind of falling off, being less. What have you seen in your business?
Oh, for sure. It's since the rates went up last year, I was in DC in June. Was it last year or was it the year before? Now I'm forgetting, but I remember that day pretty vividly when they raised the rates up, and I was actually walking the halls of the Capitol when that came out, and it was like there was just kind of this pall, and it definitely slowed things down. I was just looking for some other stuff the other day, data, and I was looking at just existing home sales. And back in 2021, the 2020 data from that year, there's 6 million homes sold in 2020, and then last year there was around 4 million homes sold.
Gotcha.
So that's just all homes, including existing. Now, new construction, we should be building about 1.1 million homes per year, and we're building probably about 850,000 homes per year. So we're not even building enough to replace the ones that have to get torn down and things like that. So we definitely need to be building more homes.
So what does that look like when rates go down? Is it going to be crazy?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the conversations trying to have with clients right now is a really good time to do something because the prices are kind of stable right now. Yeah, rates are a little higher, but the rates will go down. You can always adjust the rates down. So I tell people, get in now. You can always do a refinance or several refinances as the rates start to drop down. But once you've paid that increase in the price, you're never going to get that back. So
Yeah.
um, just do it now, because like I hate to say it, but like the lumber yards and stuff, we have a very limited flow of where we get our lumber from, a lot of it from Canada. And those guys watch permit data like a hawk.
Yeah.
And they see the permit numbers go up and they jack their prices up right away. So this, we have to apply for a permit before we buy lumber. So it's kind of one of those things where they're watching that, and they know as soon as it's starting to pick up,
They're
you can
gonna
almost guarantee the lumber futures are going to shoot up too. And that's similar with a lot of the other product that go into the house.
tell me about the idea of housing affordability and how do you work with that in your business?
Yeah, it's kind of an oxymoron to call it affordability, because one of the things I talk about a lot is actually housing affordability. And uh, one of the things I've looked at in my presentation is I talk about like the 1950s. So that was a big housing boom after World War II. And it was a one income family at the time, typically. And for double their income, they could afford a brand new home.
Mm.
They had money left over. They could buy the brand new oven and the TV and all the other stuff, right? It was a really great time in our history that, consumers had a lot of buying power. Now you compare that to today, and it's like 8.5 to 9 times the average income to
Mm.
afford a new home. And that's also with two people working.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing families just being left behind, and the affordability is just a huge issue, and there's a lot of problems baked into all of that. And a lot of it is, I think, as you look back, in the 1950s, they created all these laws to promote building, which were good, but they were designed for flat lots by schools and churches where it was really easy to build on. Well, those are all built out now, right? So now we're building on what? We're building on hilly land with wetlands and terrain and all sorts of crazy stuff. And we're applying these kind of antiquated standards. And then we've added many, many more of them over the years too. So National Association of Home Builders just did a study. The cost of regulation added to a new home today
Mm-hmm.
is $93,870 plus or minus a couple bucks there, which is basically, if you went and tried to buy a new Chevy Corvette, that
Yeah.
would be the cost of a Corvette every time you build a home, just that you're paying the government.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing, and it's frustrating. And yeah, it's just the government gets in the way in all sorts of places, locally, nationally. The delays, everything just they did a study on that, and it's like just a delay during the platting process can cost a builder $1,000.
Really?
Yeah, it just all adds up. You wouldn't believe it until you start looking at these numbers, and you're like, yeah, it makes sense.
That's crazy. And I think they're trying to make things better.
Yeah, and one of the challenges we're having now is the energy efficiency. There's obviously the war on natural gas and the promoting of electric everything. And we're all like, all builders are all for more efficient homes, but we also are for products that actually make sense
Yeah.
and have reasonable paybacks. And so some of the stuff that they're trying to do now, like they're trying to do something with ceiling fans, and they're like, oh, you'll save like $3 a year on these new fans, right? Well, it costs like $70 a fan. It's just like there's $30 a fan or something like that for some of them. And the payback's like 50, 60 years. And it's like, nobody lives in a house that long,
Or the fan's not going to last that long either.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So like, I'm all for stuff that's got like 7 years is ideal, but if it's less than 10, I think it's still reasonable. I'm not a big push on solar at the moment, just because typically it's more of a 20-year payback. So a lot of people just won't live in the house long enough to see the benefit of it.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of people adding solar or considering it?
We're prepping for solar. That seems to be what we're doing these days. So we kind of get it ready for it, and we're putting in the EV chargers now in garages for people. Even if they don't have one, that seems to be something that they're adding. But I've only done like 2 homes with solar here in Wisconsin, and it's just, people are thinking about it, but when they start to do the math and the number crunching on it, just isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
And that's with the 30% federal tax credit too.
Really? Damn.
It's still a long payoff. So if that tax credit wasn't there, I don't think you see much of it at all, to be honest with you.
Hmm. Okay, so you're an winning home builder. What is the secret to keeping your clients happy during the construction process? Because it is, you know, not
Yep.
comfortable all the time.
Yeah, you're right. It's a long process, and it's again one of the few things that you can see, other than maybe buying a sub at Subway. You're seeing it being made in front of you, right?
Hmm.
And so it's outside, and you got bad elements, and all these kind of things, and it's an imperfect process, um, and it's a scattered process, right? You don't have a factory that these are pumping out, so there's just more opportunity for things to go wrong. And then, building a home is 8 or 9 months typically of construction time. And that's a long time to wait. So people, I always say I'm not seeing the best version of my customers. um, and, they're really great at the beginning. They're a lot of fun. And then, they move into an apartment or they move into mom or dad's house, and then they kind of turn into a different version of themselves. And, you know, uh, sometimes you wonder at the end of the day, are like, oh, these people really actually like us? Like, you feel like, you've done everything wrong, and then all of a sudden they move into their house, and then they call you again, and they're like, hey, come on over and have a beer, and we love our house. You guys are awesome. And you're like, oh, okay. You're the people I remember. Um, um, but in all seriousness, there's a lot of ways to do that. And so we're very focused on our vision, mission, culture at Belman Homes, and making sure that's a good building process. One of the key tenets I think anybody has is, don't overpromise. So we don't do that. But I think we're really good about communicating and responding to people, um, understanding them, treating them, like we would want to be treated. And part of that is just the vision, and then the team that we have behind it, and that we're focused on that. We're not about pumping out 100 homes and just getting them cranked out. We're working with them, as clients, as equals. A lot of times they come up with great ideas that make the home even better, and we want to be a part of that. We want them to be excited about their home.
Hmm.
And I'm fortunate. I have people that have been with my company, the shortest tenured person, 7 years,
Wow.
and younger designer that I hired. Other than that, it's almost everybody's with me over a decade, and I have 3 decades with one of the people on my team. So, a lot of loyalty, a lot of experience there, and that makes for a great process.
So how do you handle issues with your clients when they happen?
Yeah, I mean they're going to happen, right? So I think the first thing is just really good communication. We've spent a lot of time to make sure our paperwork and our processes are really good. So we typically don't have a lot of issues with, well, I thought I was going to get this and I got that, or I don't like how this works. Because the other thing that we do is, like, we always use the same trades over and over again, and the same people that build my models build my customer homes. So typically there aren't quality issues, there aren't confusion issues. It's more of um, maybe a process or a expectation issue more so than anything.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times those, you can kind of talk through that. And yeah, every once in a while something just happens, right? Like trade doesn't finish on time. So you're like, hey, whatever, I'm not going to pick on a specific, well, I guess I'll pick on a specific trade. We'll just say painter, right? Well, painter's supposed to be done on Friday, and all of a sudden they need to work till Monday. And then we had to change the schedule a little bit. Certainly customer would get disappointed about that. Those are the kind of things that I deal with, which they're really minor issues in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But, it's about communicating, and yeah, or the biggest thing is when we went through the pandemic, and having like product being delayed. And that was more challenging in a way, but we were really upfront with our communication, and we started working with our clients and just said, hey, this is how it is, but here's what we can do to mitigate some of that. And so, and in some cases, they were like, we need your assistance
Hmm.
in order to mitigate this. Like when we found out windows went from 4 weeks to 12 weeks
Yeah.
overnight. Now the one job that was already in framing, we couldn't do anything about that, so they had to wait. But then the future jobs were like, okay, we want to get your window order in now. Can we get you to sign off on this? And we would also would you be willing to do a deposit to do this? Because you're going to own these windows now. But if we do it now, we can cut off, 5 or 6 of these extra weeks here, and
Hmm.
you're not really going to notice the difference. But you're going to need to, put a little bit bigger deposit down and sign off a little earlier. And every
Hmm.
single customer is like,
Yes.
sure, no problem, whatever you need. And it made things so much easier. So, but then multiplying that times multiple jobs times every single product that we were dealing with, we were able to work through it. But yeah, those were fun times, and we were building a little bit out of sequence from what we normally have done in the past.
Cool. And so do you have problems with customers picking their selections on time? I hear that's a
Oh
common.
yeah.
So how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's probably one of my number one pet peeves is getting customers through the selection process. And we have our own selection center, and we have our own in-house designer and stuff. And usually what happens for us is we get like 95% of the way there. And
Hmm.
then there's always like a couple little things that get hung up. And it typically involves where they're upgrading something and then they're going through and they're pricing options and then they want more options. And it just I kind of call it like the circling spiral of death where you're just like, okay, let's get off the merry-go-round here. We've been spinning around a while. Like, let's get this wrapped up. And, uh, we haven't implemented this yet, but I talked to some other builder friends, and like one of them has a set time frame. Like, you have this many days to do it, and if you don't get it done by this date, we send you an email basically, and there's a price increase, and you get bumped up, and then your start date gets bumped back 30 days.
Yeah.
And they're just very, and I'm like, boy, that's really kind of tough, but I'm like, at the same time, that's kind of a good way to do it. And so, we're kind of exploring, do we put something similar in place? We have given windows for selections, and I just have one right now. They're flying through it. They've done everything like as quick as possible, and they've actually skipped like 2 jobs. So, um, it just shows like if you do have a client that's willing to work with you, and I always tell people it's like you're going down the road. It's a two-way street, and so if you're going the same way with me, we're gonna move along quickly. But if you start going against me or you're driving at me, we're gonna slow down, and it's gonna kind of stop everything. So let's all try and go the same direction. I can go only as fast as you're willing to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, and I know it's hard for them to make those decisions, but I agree that like throws everything off if they don't make the selections, and then your schedule's behind, and then they're griping that the schedule's behind. So
Yeah,
I think having
yeah,
some kind of penalty or some kind of concession for the fact that it's now messed everything up on your side is completely reasonable.
yeah. And I think we've tried to find ways to simplify that process, and we have to some extent, but again, it's usually just those last couple details that customers kind of get hung up on. And um, there's always like, again, like some of the stuff's easy. It's like, okay, do you want this version of the faucet or this color of the faucet or that color? That can be decided pretty quickly, right? But it's sometimes like things like tile where it's a little more custom. And
Hmm.
well, do you want this kind of install or do you want that kind of install? And well, if we put a metal bullnose in versus um, a pre-finished bullnose, that's going to change the price by X amount. And those are the kind of things where we get hung up on, or it's sometimes our vendor too, where it's just like, okay, hey, I sent you this selection, 4 days ago, and I still don't have the price. I'm like, I got a customer ready to get moving forward. I need this number. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, those are the kind of things that they just get frustrating, but, um, we try and work through them as best we can, and, um, make it as good of an experience as you can. And, we've changed our process too, where we actually make our clients pick everything before we send a lick of stuff to our trade, so that once it does go out, everything that my trade had is the most accurate information that I have, and there's not multiple versions of stuff. There's not, well, here's one set of plans, and now here's a new set of plans and another set of plans. And because one day what's going to happen, one of these trades is going to run out the door. They're in a hurry to get to the job,
You
and they
grab the
grab
wrong one.
version 2 instead of version 3 or whatever, and now you've got a mistake. And we just don't tolerate that. So we really kind of adjusted our process. So it slows us down a little bit up front, but it really improves the back end a lot by doing it that way.
Like you said, you've had your trades for years. So how do you manage those relationships so they're so successful? Because I know a lot of people have problems with that.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is we're not the type of builder where we tell you this is how much you're going to get for the job. We allow them to bid it. I kind of use what I call the Noah's Ark model. So we've got 2 of everybody, right? We got 2 plumbers, 2 electricians, 2 painters, so on and so forth. So we know these guys, we know how they work. They also know that they're still in a competitive situation, so they have to bid on it, but we try and choose. We don't just choose them by price. So like, for example, right now with things being a little slower, I have 2 finished carpenters. They're each getting a job. And they know that there's kind of splitting the work and that it's going to go between the two of them. And we're communicating that. And, like with our carpenter, for example, for a little while, we had a slow spot where we weren't framing homes. So we're like, hey, we know we don't have anything coming up, go get, feel free to go find something else, find some other work for a little bit. But, around this time, we're expecting, these 3 jobs to start coming in, and then we're going to have you busy for a while. So a lot of it's just communicating and, allowing them, if they need to go get other work, letting them do that and not making them feel guilty or penalized for it. But also expecting that, hey, we have some stuff coming and this is about when it's going to come, and just upfront communication so they know the workload, and, they got to make a living too. So, we just work with them that way. And I think they appreciate the fact that we're willing to do that.
How do you communicate your standards? Because you build some gorgeous homes. How do you keep it consistent like that?
Sure. Well, it's a lot of things. I mean, one is just, using good product and using good trades. I mean, those are the first 2 pieces. So that if you do that well, that makes the job a lot easier. But every once in a while, there's something that, it doesn't turn out the way that you expected. And, you have to be honest with your trades in that case and say, hey, this isn't really to Belman standards here. And can we redo this, or we need to redo this? And that's on your project managers, right? And my project managers are sticklers for quality. I have a home we're building right now where the gentleman is a carpenter by trade himself. So he's doing some of his own work. And you'd think, being his own home, that he would be doing like A+ level work. And we were shocked at some of the stuff we were seeing, the way they cased some of the doors, and he built his own cabinets, and he like literally fused, like, this is melamine, it's cheap material, right, for a shelf. Instead of putting a new piece of melamine in for this cabinet, he fused 2 pieces together and glued it. And it's like, this is your house. Like, why would you do that? Like, that was like $10 a material. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like like if he would have been working on our home, we would have probably thrown him off the job. Like, you
Yeah.
can't do that. But it's his house, and so he's doing what he wants with it. But yeah, it was almost shocking to go through that, because our guys are just so good, they would never even, it wouldn't even enter their mind,
To do that.
Um, but if there is something where it's just, yeah, this isn't quite right. Most of our guys have a lot of pride where if they do it and they're like, yep, I didn't do this right. They'll, I've even had where they're like, yep, I screwed this up. I'm gonna, charge me for a new door. I'm gonna redo it, and not charge you for it. And you're like, charge me for the material, and you're like, okay. So we're very fortunate that we have a lot of pride on our team, and most of the guys are, they would actually take it as their responsibility if something didn't turn out the way it was supposed to.
That's good. So tell me about your sales techniques. How do you keep new projects coming in?
Yeah, it's been a little more challenging these days. So part of it is having a good sales process, and customer focused. So I think that's a big part of it. The challenge is, like right now for us, we are dealing with a lot more custom clients. So we're typically more of a semi-custom builder. So one of the things that we've had to do is, when you go more into the custom realm, you're investing a lot more time, effort, and money into these projects. So that means that, you're risking a lot more. So we've been a little bit more forward with our clients about doing deposits and doing them earlier. And it's worked out actually quite well. And it's actually transitioned into getting our customers to be more transactional, in that, instead of like trying to work your way to getting that contract and having customers get all freaked out and then they got to sign this 20-page document and they got to give you a check for 30 grand. That's like scary, right? Well, if all of a sudden, okay, at maybe the second or third meeting, you're taking a deposit for $1,500 and you're signing a 1-page thing and you're going to get X, Y, and Z out of it. And they do that first time. And then it's like, okay, now we're going to get to this point and we need $5,000 and you're going to get A, B, and C out of it. And you do it that way. The customers have been really good about doing that process, and it all comes off the price for them. But they're getting product, they're getting value and service back. We don't feel like we're wasting our time with somebody. And actually everybody has moved forward all the way when we went through that process. So we've been just a little bit more proactive on getting deposits earlier, smaller ones, and just doing work in chunks. And I always kind of say, like, if you don't like the plans that we're drawing or the product, at any point you can just stop and let us know and we'll cancel, and no harm, no foul. But yeah, no one's done that yet. Like it's usually like once we do like a concept, then we go to a final plan. Like as soon as we present the concept, they're so excited about it. You can just see the look on their face, like they're ready to move forward. So that's one kind of change we've made, and that's been a positive. And I've noticed like on our other jobs where we have more of just the regular process of you pick this plan, you make some changes to it. They're not as invested in it, and so I've had a couple where I've lost them, quite honestly, just because people are, some other builders are a little more desperate and they're willing to do deals that maybe we wouldn't want to do or whatever. And, that's not a good place to be or do as a builder, is be, cutting your margins a lot just to try and get a job.
Absolutely.
They cost what they cost to build. Your lumber isn't really any cheaper than my lumber. There's only a couple of lumber suppliers. So many different windows you can get, so many different plumbing fixtures you can put. So you have to make a certain profit. You have to, if you're going to sustain your company.
Absolutely. So do you have two different contracts, one for design and then one for build?
Yeah. So what we do is we have like a design agreement, and we have like 3 versions of it now. So there's kind of like 1, 2, and 3 basically. So as they go through a custom design process, and then we allow for too, like it's a long time to do a custom home and then price it out and then actually get it started. So like we have kind of like what I call a fast track process where I have a client doing this right now where he's like, I just want to get this thing moving as quick as possible. So it's like, okay, well, if you're willing to put down this extra deposit here, we can now survey your home on the lot. We can apply for sanitary permits and do all this other stuff while we're getting your pricing. Gotcha. He's like, okay, cool. And send that over. He signs it, gives us a check right away. And it's like, okay, we're going to work on that. Like you can still use that septic permit even if you don't build with us, but at least now it's done.
Yeah.
And so, that's been really cool to do that. And then they would still sign a regular building agreement once we've completed all the pricing and everything. But,
And it also gives you a chance, if you don't work well together, to go your separate ways.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not out a ton of money, right? They're going to be out a little bit of money, but they're not out a ton of money. And they've gotten a plan out of it. And like the other thing we do is we're very involved in that whole process. So like when they're meeting with the architect, like sometimes when people just hire an XYZ architect, that architect has no clue how the builder builds it. He has no clue what this is going to cost or what the ramifications of making those changes are. We're sitting there right with the client and right with the architect during that whole process. And I always say that I'm like the parent in that meeting, right? I'm like so like you got the kid in the candy store and you're the parent, right? And so I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, you can put that swimming pool, in the house, but that's going to add $200,000 to the cost, just so you know that. And okay, so or whatever it is. Like we had one where they did Spancrete, and we gave them kind of, this is what we think the project will cost at the beginning, and all of a sudden they added Spancrete and all sorts of stuff in there. And I remember telling them, like, you're adding $40,000-$50,000 to your project with what you did. And then as we get to the end, they're like, why is this house $70,000 more? And it's like, well, you added Spancrete and you added this and you added that. And I'm like, I'm literally like totaling up for them and showing them. I'm like, yeah, I told you all these things as you're going through. Oh yeah, okay,
yeah. Yeah, I know.
I'm not, I don't want to be the person that says like, I don't want to squash your dreams, but at the same time, I'm like, one of the two things isn't going to end up being the way you want it, right? You're either going to have to downsize the house a little bit or take some features out, or it's going to be over what you originally planned on because we did these things. So just kind of reminding them of the progression and where things came from and where they ended up.
Gotcha. So kind of switch gears a little bit. Tell us about the work you do with Operation Finally Home.
Sure. Thank you for asking that. That's something that's near and dear to my heart. So back in 2013, I got involved with this organization called Operation Finally Home, and they find a wounded combat veteran and provide them a brand new mortgage-free home.
Wow.
Free of charge. These are not tiny homes. These are not, these are normal homes I would build basically for any of my clients. And so I work with my trades and the suppliers to get as much material and labor donated as possible. And then we put on events too to raise money. So like we'll have a shoot coming up soon We have a 10th annual now golf outing, which is crazy. So we have these reoccurring events that we raise money for the organization, and then that goes in towards the build. And like here in Wisconsin, everything we raise stays right in the state and goes right to my projects.
Mm-hmm.
So people know that it's going directly to this cause, and it's been just really gratifying. Veterans are probably the most selfless people you'll ever meet. They're basically willing to take a bullet or put themselves in harm's way to protect us. And a lot of them that get in those bad situations that, unfortunately have lost their careers because of it,
Mm-hmm.
they need help. And so this is a great way to take care of them and give back to them. And my trades love it. They love helping the veterans, and been really willing partners over the years. So we've done 6 of them now here in Wisconsin. And we've actually got property for a 7th and are working towards that. So hopefully late this year we'll get another one going, and
That's
going to
pretty
keep it
amazing.
going. And my goal is to kind of do one. It's about every year and a half or so, maybe sometimes 2 years between projects, between the amount of time it takes to get everything put together and get the money raised and all the material, and then to get the home built, and then find the family and all that kind of stuff. It does take a while, but it was originally once every year, but it was getting a little hard to
Yeah, that's a lot in a year.
cycle it that fast. Yeah.
To move that fast, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
especially after COVID, that pushed all the time frames out, and
Yeah.
it made it harder for fundraising and all that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely. And you also host your own podcast. Tell us about that.
yeah, so thank you. And you were, of course, a guest on the Home Building Hero podcast. So that's the name of mine. I've been doing it for about 4.5 years now. So we're getting close to our 500 episode mark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for anybody, a lot of consumers listen, but also people in the building industry listen to it as well. And I do everything from like economic stuff to trends in homes. I was just at the International Builder Show, so I got lots of cool new product ideas and things. To also just like how-to stuff, like how to choose a builder and questions you should ask, before you buy land, and all sorts of stuff like that. And we just interviewed the CEO of the National Home Builders Association, so that'll be coming out soon. So yeah, we get some fun interviews as well, and kind of mix that all in. And it's, I think, the top 10 for construction podcasts.
Wow! Congratulations,
So, yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been very blessed for how successful that's continued to be, and yeah, just with hey, just start a podcast and then see where this goes.
Gotcha. And where's the podcast available on all the platforms?
Yeah, you can get on like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher. There's like 9 different places you can listen to it. So if you just look up Home Building Hero podcast, you should be able to find it, and appreciate it if you tune in. Maybe hit a subscribe button on it, and give us a review. So the only hard part about podcasts, I'm going to be honest with you, is like every once in a while you get someone that just gives you a bad review or something. They don't like something you say, and it's like I get a bunch of positive ones. You get one negative one here, and of course they don't give you like a 2, they give you a 1. And it's like whatever. I think it was I did an economic update like after an election, and somebody didn't like my
political views.
Well, it wasn't even a political view. It was just sort of like a prediction.
Uh-huh.
And actually, if I look back at my prediction, I think I was right. But but they just didn't like whenever politics intersects with business, that's always a challenge. But my job is to provide information as a podcaster, so that's what I'm doing. And I'm providing research and an opinion. You cannot like my opinion, but
that's fine.
I'm backing it up with facts.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I can say.
All right, so if somebody wanted to find more about Belman Homes, their gorgeous homes, where would they go?
Yeah, they can just go to our website. So it's belmanhomes.com. There is just one L in Belman. So you can check us out there. We have a Facebook page as well. And then I do post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn as well. So if you're interested in seeing the different things that I post about, I try and post 3 to 4 times a week about different things. You can just look me up. So David Belman. Just look me up on LinkedIn and give me a follow there. I would appreciate it. And I do put a lot of home building and real estate, and also just like regulatory stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that I post about all the time on there, and a lot of people really enjoy that content. And I put a lot of thought behind it, so it's usually pretty good. So definitely check that out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Karalynn. Appreciate it.